Okay, I think we'll get started. So if you're coming from the GNL project, I encourage you to go and look at the introductory video to this playlist and see if this is the right course for you. Okay, this is now the third lecture in a sequence that are building the story around inductive current, and this will bring everything now together. And so we're going to talk about Faraday's law, which will give us a chance to calculate the voltage produced when we have this changing flux through this loop. So that's what we spent a lot of time on last time when we talked about Lenz's law, and now we will see how this comes to fruition with a voltage. So this is the statement of mathematical statement of Faraday's law. The voltage here, we're using the script E again, so the electromotive force produced is given to us by the change in flux with time. Now this is really a calculus problem. This would be a derivative of flux with time, but there are a lot of problems we can work in our non-calc way to see how this all works and to solve some actual important problems. And then we will talk about an example, that being the generator, an important example, where we will just go to the answer. If you've had some calculus, you might see where it comes from. Okay, now you'll notice there are these absolute values on here, and that's because we want this law so that we can apply it to the situation we're in a kind of a general way, and then we're going to have to step in and figure out, using Lenz's law, how what the actual direction of this voltage is across, say, a load. And so that's what we'll talk about as well. Now, we can extend beyond just a loop, and we just get a simple multiplying factor. If we loop 4 times, then we get 4 times the strength of our voltage, 4 times the voltage. So for n loops, we have n times this derivative, this change in flux with time. Okay, we're going to go through a couple of setups here because I think the biggest difficulty when it comes to just setting up a problem and solving it is figuring out, how do I get this change in flux? And we're going to see that different scenarios lead to different ways that flux is changing, but at the end of the day, it's always a d flux dt, or delta flux delta t. Okay, so let's take an example here of this circuit over here, and we'll be measuring the voltage across this resistor. So according to Ohm's law, we'll be able to if we knew the resistor and the voltage, we could get the current and vice versa. So we know that the flux through a loop, well, where's our loop? We're going to take this wire and we're going to have magnetic field only over here, indicated by these blue X's. The fields going into the board, and we've produced here basically a loop. We have to connect our wires back to the main circuit, but we've created this loop here, and we have a field going through it. So the flux then is going to be this field strength, whatever that is, times the effective area. Well, in this case, the effective area is the full area because we have this facing perpendicular to the incoming field lines here. Okay, well, let's take an example where this is going to be an example where the flux changes because the field changes. There's nothing in here about this. The wires aren't stretching. It's not like up here where we were moving that rod or spinning on a bushing here. So this is stuck in place. So we can say to ourselves, okay, it's not the area that's changing. It's got to be the field that's changing. And so let's see what happens when the field changes. Let's just do a simple example here. So the example being, let's let this field ramp up in a linear way from 0 Tesla to 2 Tesla in half a second. Okay? So we can get delta flux by saying, okay, my area is constant, so what's changing? It's my B. So delta flux with temperature is delta B, or with time, sorry, not temperature, time. Delta B with time is carrying, that's what's carrying this change. This is constant otherwise. Okay, so we can calculate that by just saying 2 over 0.5, that's our slope here, that's our rate of change of B, and then times this area here, this is our example area. And we get 1 volt. Okay, so now the question is, what about these absolute value signs? The absolute value is 1 volt, but am I negative 1 volt or am I positive 1 volt? And so how we do that is we use Lenz's law. So we say, okay, in this scenario, the field was increasing its strength. So Lenz's law says current will be induced in such a way as to oppose that change in field. So the field is getting stronger. So we need to induce a current such that our field lines are going out in the opposite direction. And that would mean producing a current that circles this way, right? So our current would go like this. Our conventional current would be flowing like this through the loop. Okay, some over the top here. So if that is a battery, then let's see what that would look like. So we simply replace this whole thing, which is now acting like a battery, right, with a battery, and we try to say here, is it going to be this one, this orientation, where we have the plus here and the minus here, or is it going to be this orientation, like that? Well, in this case, the battery would drive the conventional current this way, and in this case, it would drive the conventional current this way. So therefore, in this setup, with the field rising, the current will be this way, and it will be a positive 1 volt. Now, let's take a different scenario. Let's say the field was pointing outward, right? Then we would be going inward, and we would again get 1 volt, right? But now in the opposite direction. So it would be like this orientation. So measuring across from here to here would be a minus 1 volt drop. A third scenario is, let's say we started at 2 Tesla and we bring it down now to back to 0 in the next half a second. Well, our rate of change will be identical, and so we will still get a 1 volt change here. But what is happening to the field now? The field is weakening. So by Lenz's law, we need to help it out. We need to strengthen it. So our thumb needs to go back into the board, and our fingers curl around like this. And so that would drive conventional current in this way. And again, this would be in this type of scenario where we'd have a minus 1 volt drop across here. So the moral of the story is we use these absolute values to help us just get the value of the voltage based on the rate of change, but you have to look at the setup of the problem, which could come in different ways, to determine, using Lenz's law now, to which way the induced current is going to go. And then what you do is you say, okay, if whatever this crazy setup is, if that were a battery, which direction would it be plugged in, like this or like this? Okay, let's look at our now famous example where we've used a couple of times with this sliding rod on this U-shaped setup. We've got it's bathed in a magnetic field, so as this rod gets pulled this way, the number of field lines going through the loop, this is the loop here, going through the loop increases. So although the field is constant now, the flux is increasing. And in fact, we need to look at this in sort of a subtle way. This is the distance L, let's say, and then this is the distance X. So the area here is X times L, right? But L is not changing, only X is. So if we're going to have a change in area, in this particular case, it's coming from a change in X, and the L is just constant. Okay? Well, we're interested in the change in area with change in time. So delta area, delta time will be delta X, delta time times L. And what is this? This is the velocity. So this is our formula here. And we recognize this as the velocity. So this may have felt like a problem out of the blue, or where does it fit into all this? Because we've got this velocity, we don't even have area here. How are we going to calculate the flux? Well, you have to pick apart the individual pieces and identify the thing that's changing, and then the rest are constant. If we use our numbers, if these are just some practice numbers here, we get 2 volts. Again, we want to see which direction is that current going. Well, in this case, it's going this way, so we need to have an opposing field in this direction, so our current needs to be going this way. So we have an increasing flux, so it's just like the case over here. So this would be a positive 1 voltage drop across here. Our battery orientation would be like this. Okay, the next example, we would need some calculus, as I mentioned earlier. This is a generator, but it is an important example. And just to add, let's add something. Let's include, say, 10 loops. So we're going to need to use this formula with the number of loops. Frequency of 5 hertz, that means it's spinning at 5 hertz. And the area is half a square meter. So the change in flux is going to be the field, right? That's not changing. The area itself is not changing, but what is changing is the effective area. And so the effective area is this angle. And so let's think about this. As this is rotating, right, it's going through an angle. So the effective area is based on the angle of that. And we're now looking at the rate of change of that angle. And again, here's where the calculus slips in. We've got a sinusoidal or cosinusoidal relationship because of this angle. So if we take the rate of change of that with time, if you've had some calculus, you'll note that will also be a cosine or sine. So if we had, say, a cosine, then we'll get sine, as we do in this case. But out of that comes this prefactor here, this 2 pi f. So the mysterious bit of this formula is really coming from calculus, and we can't see it without understanding some calculus. So we're just going to have to take it as the answer. And so this is our formula for the rate of change of the flux for a generator example. Now, the voltage then will be 10 times this, because we multiply by this factor of 10. If we want to figure out the range, what is this going to do? It's going to go from high voltage to low voltage to high voltage to low voltage in the form of a sine. We know sine itself is pinned between a +1 and a -1. So this, if we're looking for the maximum, we just set this part to 1. This is all E naught. And so we can just calculate E naught here with everything we know from the example problem. And we get 314 volts. So here are 3 important examples. The big thing here is, can you identify, go back and practice identifying what is changing and what is staying constant in all of these cases. All right, we're just going to finish with kind of a side example here, but it is an interesting one and an important one, some interesting physics here. So let's imagine we've got this magnet that can produce these 2 magnets, north and south, and we're producing a very kind of localized magnetic field. Now, of course, it spreads out, gets weaker this way, but right here it's very localized. Then I'm going to take a slab of copper and run it right through that, like this. Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to depict here. And I am now going to flip, let's flip and look down from the top. So we're looking down from the top. The field lines are penetrating through the metal, as indicated here. And there's more field lines here, and they get less and less as we go out here. So let's imagine now we're just sitting, we're a little ant here sitting on this metal, and we're coming along. Now, as we are coming along in this direction, we are starting to feel an increase in field lines. Right? And then it's strongest here. And then when we come out the backside, we're feeling a decrease in field lines. So the rate of change of the flux through a small region around us, if we're this ant sitting there, the small region around us, the rate of change of flux is increasing here, momentarily constant here, and then decreasing over here. And so by Lenz's law, we're going to induce some current, induced current, circular current inside that metal, which is kind of interesting. Usually we think of needing wires to make a loop, but the slab of metal itself will provide the pathway for this circular current. And we just follow Lenz's law. So field lines coming in like this, that means we have to come out like this, and we're going to get a so-called eddy current in this direction here. Now let's imagine we've come through and out the other side. Now we're moving along. What is happening in our local region there? We're losing field because we're moving away from that field. So we're losing flux, and therefore we need to help it out. And so we'll induce, by Lenz's law, we'll induce current that will help it out. So our thumb needs to be going into the border with the field, and we get an eddy current in this direction. So that's kind of interesting physics that you don't think about much, because we think about current flowing through separated wires here, but we can get these eddy currents happening in these slabs of metal. And in fact, what you can do is you can come along and you can cut slices in these. So if we cut a bunch of grooves in this metal, that will cut the circuit, and you would see no or very little eddy currents being developed. So if you threw this one without the slits through the magnet, it would induce these eddy currents, and we always know that the net force on that, the magnetic force on that, is going to oppose motion, mechanical motion, and so that will slow this down. But if you throw the one with the slits through, then because the eddy currents can't form, or not form as well, we would get much less of a slowing down of that slab, because we couldn't induce that current because of those slits. All right, so this is a long story, 3 days, lots of problems hopefully you've worked on, and you feel good about the calculations. Always working to put together the calculations and the story of this inductive current.